Good morning, this is Michael from Diamond Seed Astrology. This video is going to be on something which I probably have discussed in some other videos, but it's probably buried in some other topic or some place that you might not necessarily be able to find it. So this is going to be on the topic of the cross. The cross in its theological sense as it pertains to astrotheology. The cross, in this case, I'm talking about the cross of the equinoxes and the solstices, the points, the cardinal points of the year. So this is probably one of the most unexamined things about astrology. Suffice to say, if your background is not in astrology, I'm going to try and make this video still comprehensible. But if you are trained in astrology to some degree, that's okay too. You probably haven't really been exposed to this. So the cross, as we know, is a theological symbol for Christianity. It's a symbol that goes back way beyond Christianity to the Celtic cross and crosses and many other traditions, too many to name. And the cross in these cases does, it doesn't necessarily refer to what I'm speaking of, but it does at some level. Whenever we see religious symbology, any kind of symbology, there's going to be multiple levels of meaning. And to people who know about the astrotheological meanings, and there are a lot of people who do, this is one thing they're gonna understand, that the cross is signifying the cardinal points of the year. So what's the importance of the cross in this case? The cardinal points of the year are the traditionally for people points where we celebrate. We recognize the importance of the changing of seasons in those places where there are seasonal changes, and just the fact that the sun's movements are different. Even if you're on the equator, there's going to be a difference in terms of what is going on with the sun. So the lens through which I'm going to look at the cross is the lens of dignity in astrology. So each of these points begins what's called a cardinal sign in astrology. There are four of them, obviously, the 4 points of the cross. The first well, there's two ways that we can start the year, and one is the solar year that begins with the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, where the sun is reborn. Essentially, the sun has been in a retreat. It's been getting, the days have been shorter and shorter in the northern hemisphere. And people would traditionally celebrate the return of the sun. That's why we have the Christmas holiday is actually the day, the 25th is the day when there is perceptible lengthening of days after 3 days of after the 21st, which is usually when the solstice is, when the sun seems to just stand still and does not, there's no real visible increase of day length. So the 25th is when we have our Christmas. We have the end of Saturnalia. We have the birthday of many of the sun gods in traditional religions. So the other place where we often start the year is at the equinox, the spring equinox, where the sun has not only been growing for 6 months. It's now the days become equal length to the night and start increasing in length past the point where they're still shorter than the nighttime. So this marks the beginning in the northern hemisphere, especially in places which have strong seasonal times. This marks the beginning of the fertile year, when the year we have our planting and abundance. The abundance of the goddess is is where it begins. Again, if you're closer to the equator, it's going to be slightly different, but there's good reason, which I will not get into right now, to believe that astrology's origins were actually somewhere between the 45th and the 49th parallel in the northern hemisphere, and that's based on the Book of Enoch, and I will not get into that deeply right now. So those are the 2 points of beginning of the year. So the 2 points of other points are the summer solstice and the fall equinox. So those are the points, the cardinal points that make up this cross. So now to look at the cross in astrology, we find that there are 4 different planets that rule these cardinal points. And the first one, according to the solar year, which is what we sort of follow in the Western Hemisphere, begins with Capricorn, and that is begun with with Saturn ruling, and it begins with Mars in exaltation. So this is, we want to remember that. This is Mars in exaltation and Saturn ruling this sign, and the sign that begins the solar year. The next cardinal point is Aries, and the ruler of Aries is Mars again. And the exalted planet at this point is the Sun. So Aries, we have these two, the Mars and the Sun, and again, so that is the point where the Sun is increasing in power, and the days are getting longer. And to go back to Capricorn, the days are still in we're not in a fertile season, so it's we have a certain feminine aspect to winter, which in the northern hemisphere, which is that it's barren. That there's no increase. The sun is maybe increasing, but the land is still barren. There is no fertility. In the springtime, we have both an increase in solar length of days, solar power, and we also have fertility in its increase. So we want to think of that in terms of the rulers that we have for those signs. So now the next sign, cardinal sign, is Cancer, where we have the sun is just met its maximum, and it's starting to decline. But the fertile year is still in increase, and it's still moving along. So our abundance is still in a positive, but our sun is in a decrease. So the next of the cardinal signs is the rulers of Cancer are the Moon and Jupiter. So the next cardinal sign is Libra. And this is the point where the sun is now in decline. The sun is, the days are getting shorter. And the fertility of the year has ended. So there's still the abundance of the year has come. And our Virgo season is when, traditionally we would think of our harvests. Our harvests are at the maximum. And Libra is like we've got our harvest festivals, and certain crops are still coming, but things are clearly in decline. The sun is getting weaker, and fertility is on its way out in terms of abundance and the fruits of the earth. And the rulers of Libra, the fourth of our cardinal signs are Saturn in exaltation and Venus in rulership. What does this mean? Now, if we look at these planets, so if you don't really go deeper into the traditional doctrines, you could leave it there and just say, well, that's really interesting. These 4 planets are ruling these cardinal signs, and again, so these cardinal signs are all signs are equal in a way. There's no signs that are greater than others or lesser than others, sort of. Since these cardinal signs are host to the points of the cross, they actually are, on one metaphorical level, more important than all the others in this certain aspect. The fixed signs are also extremely important because they house the center of the season points, which are usually Beltane and the summer festival. Beltane being the spring, the summer festival, the fall, which we celebrate as Halloween, or All Saints Eve or All Saints Day, and then the midwinter festival. So the fixed signs house those. So those are considered extremely important. The mutable signs are also very important because they're transitional, but they do not actually house either of those 2 important theological points. So they're considered cavant signs, which are they're weaker in certain ways, which is again, this shouldn't be considered qualitatively. They're not inferior, but they don't house these religiously significant points. So these cardinal points, each of these rulers, according to the doctrine of sect, which divides the planets into 2 separate masculine and feminine groups, when you start to look at these cardinal points from that lens, then something very interesting happens. So again, let's go back. We have Saturn ruling Capricorn and Mars in exaltation in traditional astrology. So modern astrology may do different things with that for different reasons. And generally, modern astrologers don't know about the doctrine of sect, or maybe don't think it's important, or think it doesn't play into any of this. But what we have here is a very interesting correlation on each of these points. So Saturn is in the day sect. So that's when you talk about modern, traditional Hermetic principles, you find the masculine is generally correlated to the positive, to increase, to expansion. So Saturn is in the masculine sect, but to make it more interesting, Saturn is a feminizing effect in the masculine sect, the day sect, which is ruled by the sun and has Jupiter and Saturn as its members. So even though Saturn is in the day sect, which would be a plus, that would be a positive, it's actually a functionally negative planet. So then we have Mars in as the exaltation ruler of Capricorn, and Mars is in the night sect, but in similar fashion, Mars is the masculine force within the night sect. So he, just like Saturn, he's playing a contrary role within the sect. So we have these 2 contrary forces at the who are in exaltation and rulership, who have this special dignity. They have special meaning at this point. And if you look at the zodiac as sort of a source of theology and guidance for humanity. We should be looking to the rulers, the archetypal rulers of each of these signs as the guide to our appropriate behavior and the sort of this archetype that shepherds us through the season. So we have this cardinal point, which is got a increasing. It marks the increase of the sun's power. So that is a plus. It means we have something's increasing, and then we have the barrenness of the season, which is in the terms of fertility. This season is in the negative. It's barren. There is no fertility, no abundance. So we have a plus, and we have a minus essentially with this season. So looking at the rulers, we have Mars, which is playing a masculine role within the feminine sect, which is a plus. And we have Saturn, which is playing a feminizing role within the masculine sect, which is a minus. So we have these two indicators that are running parallel here, and we have rulers that also reflect this. So moving to the next sign, which is Aries, and again our Arian rulers are Mars is the ruler of Aries, and the Sun is the exalted planet in Aries. So this is the point of the vernal equinox. So now we have the Sun in increase, which is a plus, and then we have abundance and fertility in an increase. So what do we have for rulers? We have Mars, which again is a masculinizing force in the night sect, and we have the Sun, who is the ruler of the day sect. So we have plus for Mars as in its masculine archetypal role, and we have a plus for the Sun in its rulership of the masculine sect. So again, if we look back at Capricorn, we'll notice we have technically a night sect planet, which is Mars, and exaltation, and we have a day sect planet, which is in rulership. So we have a balance in each of these places. We have a night sect ruler, a day sect ruler in Capricorn, a night sect ruler, a day sect exaltation planet in Aries. Now, moving on to Cancer, the rulers of Cancer, which begin with the summer solstice. The rulers are the Moon, which is a night sect planet. It's a feminine archetype in traditional consideration. It is the ruler of the night sect. And our exaltation planet is Jupiter. So again, our two yardsticks here, the way which we're judging things is we have a night sect ruler again, and we have a day sect exaltation planet. The summer, we have fertility is still an increase. Fertility is still happening. The vernal year is approaching its peak. At the same time, the solar year is in decrease now. So the sun has reached its maximum, but it's now falling away. Days are becoming shorter. So again, looking to our rulership planets, we have a feminine night sect planet that rules the Cancer, and we have a day sect exaltation planet, which is Jupiter. So we have a negative ruler, meaning a feminine ruler, who's that again, feminine and decrease are correlated, and masculine and increase are correlated. That is not a moral judgment. That is simply an understanding of how Hermetic principles work. So we have a negative, which follows the sun and its decrease, and Jupiter, which is a day-sect masculine planet, which follows fertility in its increase, and it's still our fertility is still going. So moving to the last of the cardinal points, we are in Libra, which is the autumnal equinox, and the rulers of Libra. Now we have Venus in rulership, and Venus is a member of the night sect. So we have once again a night sect ruler in domicile, and then we have a day sect exaltation planet following our pattern, which was only broken apparently by Capricorn, which reverses these. But functionally, again, the two archetypes are in they're malefic, so they flipped. So I hope that makes sense. So, but for Libra, we have Venus, which is a night sect planet, and our abundance, our fertility is in decrease at this point. And we have Saturn, which is a day sect planet, but it is a feminizing, negating energy. It does not. It is malefic, so it reverses the basic quality of its sect. Both Mars and Venus are like the safety valve for each of these sects, which serve to upset and limit and break up the expansion of the day sect in the case of Saturn, which is Saturn is traditionally it's related to death, it's related to limitation, to darkness, to decrease, to old age, to withholding, to coldness, and to limitation. It has all of these significations are contrary to the traditional understanding of what a masculine archetype is. Mars is a contrary force. Again, he's malefic, and he breaks up the solidification, the congealing, the harmonization, the excessive coldness, this excessive solidness of the feminine sect when it does have those attributes. So the malefic planets serve they serve this function of disrupting and destroying the basic signification of the sect to which they belong. So back to Libra. Libra has got a negative ruler. And again, when I say negative, it's this is related to the feminine sect being decrease and the masculine being increase. So both things are increasing. Both our two yardsticks are going downward at this point, and our rulers are also both negative. They both are one is part of the feminine, the night sect, and she is feminizing. She is Venus, and then Saturn again is all of these negative feminizing attributes. So there we have it. The 4 points of our cross are, if we look at them through this lens of dignity, we have a perfect correlation between these basic attributes of increase, solar increase, or fertility increase, or solar decrease, or fertility decrease, that match the energetics of the rulers at those cardinal points. So if we mess around and decide that we're going to change, like who is in exaltation and what these planets are doing, and if we pull them off of their dignity, their traditional dignity, we are perhaps misunderstanding the most fundamental aspects of these archetypes. These archetypes are not simply human-like gods. They are that. They absolutely are that. They are aspects and renditions of these archetypal attributes of human personality. That is, there's no question about that. And they do have the natural affinity to certain things. So I hope everything that I've said has made sense so far. So I'm going to say this too. So again, so Mars is traditionally in exaltation in Capricorn. And then Mars is in rulership in Aries. What do those 2 points have in common? Those are 2 points, like seasonal indicators when the sun is in increase. So Mars has some special relationship to the sun. There's absolutely no question about that. Mars is sort of like, metaphorically, one metaphor for Mars is the birth event, because Mars is present at both of these sort of birthings, the beginning of the solar year in Capricorn, even though metaphorically in Capricorn, the life energy is in the root in the northern hemisphere. There's not going to be any fertility, so therefore we go inside ourselves. We become more introverted. The season is introverted in terms of there's no outward expression. There's no green leaves growing. There's nothing that's fruiting in an outward sense. But Mars is sort of holding this internal spark of fire in the at this point. So that is the most basic, primordial signification of Mars. It's we understand Mars to be the god of war, but that is a secondary meaning of Mars. This is the primary and most primordial meaning of Mars. All the other keywords that are understood for Mars come after this. This is the original signification of Mars as a force of nature. So then Mars in Aries, Mars is present with the sun, and again he's accompanying the sun as it's in increase, as season as it's in increase. So you see Mars in both of these points, sort of adding fuel to the fire of the year, shepherding us through increase, providing the fortitude and the this will to increase, to break things up, so that the fertile year is able to happen. It's providing the tilling the fields so that the seeds can be planted, so to speak. Other planets have a tremendous amount of impact on that and are entirely involved in that. So this is not simply Mars. This is Mars in combination with these other planets, and being driven by the sun, clearly. The sun is the external source of heat, while Mars is the internal source of heat. So that is hopefully something that we can start to include in our astrology if we want to have a really strong understanding of what these archetypes mean. We shouldn't just go with the popular understanding of what these archetypes are, because these are the forces of nature. They are essential. They are primordial. They do not. You cannot rob them of their territory without sort of destroying your own understanding of how these archetypal forces work, and that is true of your internal landscape as well as the external one. We cannot simply put Mars into a place of, call him toxic masculinity, and then toss the archetype into the historical wastebasket and say that it's, something we don't need anymore. That is a complete and total misunderstanding of these archetypal territories, because these are forces of nature, and our psyche is ruled by a similar natural law that the external world is ruled by. Okay, that is my video for today. I'm hoping this makes a lot of sense to people. If you'd like to understand more about this, I'm going to be doing a class which is called Persephone's Zodiac, in which I'm going to be going into this in great detail with visual aids and a lot more presentation that will hopefully clarify this and make this something that you can use in your astrology if you're an astrologer. If you're not an astrologer, this is hopefully useful, because this has to do with your archetypal makeup as a human being. So this is, these are not negotiable points. These are, this is natural law as I see it. So again, this is Michael from Diamond Seed Astrology. My website is michaelmsuter.com, and I will be doing more videos like this. And again, the class, you'll be able to sign up for that fairly soon at michaelmsuter.com. All right, thank you.